Tutti abbiamo bisogno di qualcuno che ci abbracci.
È la persona la cosa più importante.
Accade che a un certo punto ti senti a casa, un luogo dove si possa vivere.
Noi siamo una famiglia,
Loro ci sono per noi.
Perché l'aspettavano così?
Perché credo in quello che dico.
Questo e basta?
Sì.
Don Giussani ha generato un popolo e io faccio parte di questo popolo.
L'avvenimento in cui Dio entra nella nostra esistenza e tutti, colpiti da una curiosità, sospendono per un istante l'ora e guardano dalla parte da cui viene il grido.
Tutti abbiamo bisogno di qualcuno che ci abbracci.
È la persona la cosa più importante.
Accade che a un certo punto ti senti a casa, un luogo dove si possa vivere.
noi siamo una famiglia,
Loro ci sono per noi.
Perché l'aspettavano così?
Perché credo in quello che dico.
Questo e basta?
Sì.
Don Giussani ha generato un popolo e io faccio parte di questo popolo.
L'avvenimento in cui Dio entra nella nostra esistenza e tutti, colpiti da una curiosità, sospendono per un istante l'ora e guardano dalla parte da cui viene il grido.
La civiltà dell'amore, fratelli e sorelle, costruite senza stancarvi mai questa civiltà. Lavorate per questo, pregate per questo, soffrite per questo.
Buonasera.
Good afternoon and welcome. Good afternoon. Welcome to this session. This evening, we will be surrounded by words. We have two leading writers with us. They work with words, but they also show what the title says. The Irreducibility of Man. This is an ambitious title that stems from an exchange of emails that we had this summer before, in preparation for this session. So we were talking about the writers during the war, and we actually reread those writers who had described the evil of the world. And then I sent an email to the great Éric-Emmanuel Schmitt. And that same email I sent to the great writer and also dear friend of mine, Daniele Mencarelli. In this email, there was a quote by Simone Weil, a philosopher whom I started to love as a child. And the quote reads as follows. At the bottom of the heart of every human being, from earliest infancy until the tomb, there is something that goes on indomitably expecting. In the teeth of all experience of crimes committed, suffered and witnessed, that good and not evil will be done to him. It is this, above all, that is sacred in every human being. This quote comes from the publication The Person and the Sacred. So literature is talking about this invincible request for good. So we start from here. A child who has cancer, and he writes to God, and he tells the following. This is the first reading we are proposing to you this way. It is from Oscar and the Lady in Pink by Éric-Emmanuel Schmitt. You know, Oscar, you will die one day, but your parents will die too. I was amazed by what he was telling me. I had never thought about it. Yes, they will die too, all alone, and with the terrible remorse of not being able to reconcile with their only son, an Oscar that they adored. Don't say things like that, Grandmother Rosa. They give me the creeps. Think of them, Oscar. You understood that you are going to die because you are a very clever little boy. But you haven't understood that you're not the only one to die. Everyone dies. Your parents one day, me one day. Yes, but I'll go on ahead. That's true, you'll walk in the front, you walk ahead, but with the excuse that you walk in the front, do you have every right? And also the right to forget the others? I understand. Granny Rosa, you call them. Here, God, the sequel in a few words, because my pulse is tired. Grandma Rosa alerted the hospital, who alerted my parents, who came to Grandma Rosa, where we all celebrated Christmas together. When my parents arrived, I told them, "Excuse me, I forgot that you will die too one day." I don't know what unlocked this sentence of mine in them, but afterwards, I found them as they were before Christmas, and we had a wonderful Christmas evening. Thank you very much to Matteo Bonanno. So let's start from here. I am with Éric-Emmanuel Schmitt, a playwright, a writer, a director. Let's start from this passage, from this excerpt, and from this book, which has been very successful in Italy as well, Oscar and the Lady in Pink. That's a reflection on the illness of a child, innocent suffering, and it's also a reflection on death. So the first, irreducibility of man. This is a question that we always pose to us ourselves. So cannot man be reduced also to to his or her same death? So I believe that actually Oscar was I was asked to accompany people until the moment of their death. And I realized that sometimes I was reacting very badly in these moments because I was no longer seeing the person. I was only seeing the illness. I was first seeing the illness and then the person. I saw the earth that was actually progressing. And I think this is something that happens to everybody. You see that you're no longer capable of communicating with someone who is very ill and who's about to die. We are overwhelmed by fear, and in my life I made this kind of experiences for a long time, and so I had to relearn to look at the person first, in spite of the illness and in spite of death. So for me, the person, this unique entity, is the most precious thing. I would say that vulnerability, weakness and frailty make the individual even more frail, weaker. What makes me love human beings is the fact that they are frail. The vulnerability of the other amplifies affection, the love that I can feel for the other. And since I know that I am not immortal and also the others are not, I love more. I do not believe that the thought of death is a depressing one. It's quite the opposite. It is a thought that enriches us. Ancient philosophers used to say that we should remind ourselves that we are immortal every day. I believe that we should change the same thing, but to say the same thing in contemporary terms. We have to remember every day that we are alive. And being alive means being frail. This frailty, I like it passionately. I love it passionately. So I live in a city in Rome in which death is never put in brackets. It's not something that is forgotten. It's not forgotten, as in many other towns, which are very frenetic, beautiful. And I thank God because of this, that I have this this thing that always reminds me of this. At the same time, we have the war today, and we've gone through 2 years of a pandemic. And these two events are telling us that, remind us each and every minute that man is evil, that man is finite, that man has no meaning in his life. I believe that nothing has changed. It's just that we are more aware today of our condition, maybe compared to other moments in history. In some moments you forget that nations have a history, that they go to war one against the other. We forgot that. We've lived in a long period of peace, and we thought that that would have gone on forever, but nothing is new in this. I think that man does not progress. Science progresses, technology progresses, but not the human being, not man. Today's man is not more moral than Plato or Aristotle or Immanuel Kant. So I believe that man does not progress. I also believe that the evil is what makes progress go on. So it's necessary for men to, in a way, wage wars or apocalyptic events in order for things to go better. You need world wars to create the society, the League of Nations. You need pandemics to set up the World Health Organizations. You need natural disasters for people to become aware of climate change. So I believe that men as a society, so men all together, do not really want the good. They want to avoid the worst. So I believe that the engine of progress is not so much this desire for the good, but rather this willingness to avoid the evil, the worst. You always have to have something bad, something evil, in order for mankind to progress. I am a tragic optimistic. And a tragic optimistic because I think that the evil of progress is, the engine of progress is evil, but that makes us go on. There was a leading English person, Cecile Saunders, who invented hospices because she believed that the doctors of her time, of the 20th century, when a person was terminally ill, the doctors of her time was finite. As a patient, they would ignore him or her. There was no palliative care back then, and so she waged some kind of a battle to prove that that person, even if his or her destiny was about to end, still had a value, still was a person. Is there this, I think there is this attention today as well, even if legislation in a way kind of lead us towards the end of life as a decision of the individual. I believe that doctors play a twofold role. They have the task to treat and heal people when they can, but they always have to take care of the person. They have to take care of the other. And I also believe that there are moments in history in which medicine makes such advances that it sometimes becomes inhuman. There are doctors today who look at statistics before an individual, and they even forget that they're dealing with a person, and that's very, very serious. The progress of medicine should not become the progress of the dehumanization of our treatments. We have everything at our disposal today. We have also a large extent of dehumanization because medicine can become very technical. So there are statistics characterizing medicine, analyses are being carried out, and these analyses were not performed in the past. But at the same time, we also have some risks linked to the dehumanization of our relationship with the other. So much depends on the person. There are doctors today who are human doctors. They know how to address a patient, an ill person, and so their words can do a lot of good. Sometimes their words really heal the patient. That's something that should always be borne in mind. That's why I wrote this book, Oscar and the Lady in Pink, because the child does not is not healed in my book. The doctors and the team of doctors fail in their therapy. And the child will teach them that even if he's not going to be healed, he's still there. So you need to take care of him. It's the child who teaches those surrounding him to remain human, to remain in touch with the others and with him. I'm very happy because today, for example, in France, when you carry out medicine studies, this is a text that is read in the schools of medicine, because this is a book that is about the way in which patients, in this case a child, experiences this moment of treatment, this moment of care. And he also experiences the therapeutical defeat in a way. You also have to go through these steps. You have to be able to accept these forms of defeat. If you are unable to do that, you cannot live. And so there is a very wonderful ending for this book. Sometimes people tell me that I should have basically healed the child, and I explained to them that I am not an American author, always there to provide readers with a happy ending. What I would like to show with this story is that we need to know how to be ill. Being ill also means being alive, and we need to know how to be alive in spite of our frailty, in spite of our illness. This is the big teaching, the biggest learning. If you are ill, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be healed. And Oscar is a metaphor of all of us. He doesn't have so many days left to live. We have months or years, maybe decades, but at the same time, we will come to that stage. I mean, she's there waiting for us. So it's not so much a matter to become strong to defeat death, but rather to accept the finite character of our human condition and the strength to accept it, to accept this weakness. That's why we don't have a happy ending. There's never a happy ending.
Allora adesso passiamo a un'altra storia.
All right, so now let's move to another page, another story, another page, and thanks to our great actors, Giampiero Bartolini and Bonanni. Let's listen to them. From La Casa degli Sguardi by Daniele Mencarelli. At the height of the Art Nouveau window stand two youngsters. The mother holds a child in her arms while the father plays with him, shows him the fountain in the inner garden. Meanwhile, with grimaces and foul tongues, makes the child laugh. When they are no more than a meter away, the two parents turn around, and with them the child. Their steps lose their rhythm, as does their breathing. The little one will be 3 years old. Apart from his eyes, his face does not exist. Instead of a nose, the mouth, there are holes of red flesh. I squint my eyes on the marble floor. I slip past him without looking at them anymore. In the warehouse, while I prepare the trolley, I come to the certainty that I've reached saturation point. No more. With this hospital, with all the sick, shapeless, dead children, enough. I smoke a cigarette, then another. I waste time hoping that those two boys, those two parents and their disfigured son are gone. The child's laughter comes first. They are still there. Now, however, they're not alone. In front of them is a nun. She's elderly, leaning forward. Her face brushes against the child's terrible one. You're Mommy and Daddy's boy, aren't you? She takes a little hand and kisses it. He perhaps tickles and bursts out laughing. The nun is no less than 80 years old. Her face is plump, white as milk. So you're not only handsome, you're also nice. You're funny. Do you like that? And she runs her little hand over his mouth, his chin, to his delight. Then the nun straightens up, looks at the father and mother. But don't you hear the laugh he has? This one inside doesn't have silver. It has gold, living gold. She kisses him, despite his face, despite everything. I keep pushing the trolley with buckets and brooms. I'm stunned. I cannot understand. Decipher. I've seen something human, and at the same time, strange, like a ritual from a distant land. I cannot, within myself, find tools to translate it into my own language. Thank you.
Daniele Mencarelli, scrittore, poeta.
Daniele Mencarelli, writer and poet. You wrote this autobiographical page in the first book of your trilogy, La Casa degli Sguardi. So I'd like to ask you, how human is it to seek good where it seems to be denied? Well, I'd like to start from the meeting with the nun, because the encounter with the nun is actually the encounter of my life. Actually, my 3 books, autobiographical books, exist because, well, because of what the nun introduced in my life. There's a reality that I always looked for without being aware of it. I always looked for a reality that is bigger than me, which reveals the thing that I was looking for. And with regard to good, I always looked for good, attention towards good by human beings. And I always found good in those unexpected places, in those places which usually don't produce good. Camillo Sbarbaro, a great Italian poet that is often forgotten about, he talks about the bad things related to human beings, contemporary human beings, customs or habits, being far from good and bad at the same time, and as a consequence, not able to recognize them anymore. And, well, a few situations occur to me. I'm something that is not looking, that doesn't have ambitions, which doesn't tend towards either bad or good. I agree with Eric when he says that human beings need to be woken up. And, well, we need things that allow us to reach good through error. Human beings manage to find good through lepers, for example. Well, we manage, when we are woken up, we manage to find good. Otherwise, the risk is that we close ourselves inside our luxury flats, our luxury houses, where we become human beings that are just happy with their habits. And this is the real bad, the real evil of our current time. So you mean denying happiness, denying beauty? So that's quite different from what it looks like. I mean, it doesn't occur by erasing them, canceling them, but actually it occurs through ignorance, with distance. Yes, that's it. I wrote an article some time ago, and I talked about a dictatorship of happiness, because, all these habits, and so the unavailability to live our fragilities. This is what, over time, has been filled with thousands of things to buy, which make promises to us. They make the promise to reach that result. But, well, I don't think that human beings were born in order to have, to reach the happiness we think about. Human beings are fragile, and we're made in order to find those moments of friendship, of joy, that allow us to go through in our life. We have a very toxic idea of happiness nowadays. We talk about happiness as if it was a land to reach, a destination point. But, the happy endings are in the worst American movies. Yes, but there's something in your work that always comes back. It's the other. You know, at the end, this child and the nun are like an alarm, but they are the others, something you don't expect, the unforeseen event. I think that human beings by nature are looking for good. And I look for good. I find good in the most unexpected places. But I know very well where my bad is located. It's inside me. And this is what I also tell in my books. And, well, you know, the others have always been the only means in order not to be overwhelmed by my only enemy. My only enemy is myself. And, you know, I had many encounters, and I met many people, and I'm the worst enemy of myself.
A fare un altro passo.
So let's try and address another topic, even if actually the reflection you've proposed us is the perfect introduction to the passage we are going to listen to. We're going to have you listen to some great drama expert. So the drama is written by Éric-Emmanuel Schmitt, and it's called The Visitor. Are you leaving me? I have never left you. Will I never see you again? As often as you like, but not with your eyes. And how? I was here, Freud. I was always here, hiding, and you never found me. And you never lost me. And when I heard you say that you didn't believe in God, you sounded like a nightingale complaining that you didn't know music. So depart, Dr. Freud, and take as many people with you as you can. Save them. But I haven't understood. I still don't understand. Stop there. Well, I said, bye, goodbye, Mr. Freud. No way. Well, what a weakness, Freud. You won't think of going out of the window like an ordinary human being, not even a burglar. I demand that you disappear here before my eyes. Doubt. Always doubt. So he approaches the window and staring Freud in his eyes makes as if he moves aside, as if he were moved by an invisible power. Goodbye. So Freud shakes him, runs to get the gun from the table, and then with both arms outstretched points it to the stranger. Watch me, I'll shoot at you. Yeah, really? I'll shoot. Of course. If you were the madman who escaped tonight, that Walter Oberseit, or the man who is ruthlessly courting Anna every afternoon, you'd have a cause, a bullet. You'd be a cause, a bullet, a dead body. Just think of that, Dr. Freud. Losing faith and freedom at the same time and then going to prison for murder. Are you sure the game is worth the candle? I have faith that you will not fall. Well, then keep it that way. Faith must feed on faith and not of proof. I've had enough of being teased. You would behave the same if you were the devil. A God who manifested himself clearly as God would not be God. He would be, at most, the king of the world. I cloak myself in obscurity. I need the secret. Otherwise, what would be left for you to decide? I am a mystery, Freud, not an enigma. I'm not converted. You alone can be converted. You are free. It is always man who makes the voices speak. I haven't gained anything from it. Until tonight you thought that life was absurd. From now on, you know it is mysterious.
Grazie. Allora avete capito?
You've probably understood what we're going to address now. Éric-Emmanuel Schmitt wrote a number of different dramas, and this is a real masterpiece. For those of you who haven't seen it, in Italy on Rai Play, there is a wonderful edition where it's a theater piece. And in this theater piece, you imagine that the great Sigmund Freud is visited by God. As if God were the visitor in his house in Vienna on the eve of his expatriation to flee the Nazi invasion. So in this way, you emphasize that the peculiar irreducibility that is in the heart of every one of us, which is the desire for God, the longing for God. There is no atheist, there is no Freud who does not know what this thirst for the infinite is. I've had the idea of this piece one evening watching TV, while I was watching TV. I was watching the news with updates on what had happened during the day. And that evening, I was listening with my heart. And I was really puzzled and disrupted by everything that I was listening to, many terrible facts taking place in the world. And I was in tears at the end of the news. So I told myself, if God watched the evening news, he would also get depressed. Soon after, I said to myself, well, if God got depressed, well, whom would he visit? So I imagined visit lying on the sofa of Freud. And so I said to myself,
Et je me suis dit,
and so I said to myself, well, there would be an extraordinary encounter because Freud does not believe in God and God does not believe in Freud. Because God doesn't have any complexes, he doesn't have any any parents, no censorships. And so I said to myself, well, these two beings have nothing to share, so they have lots of things to tell each other. That's why I wrote this piece. And as a matter of fact, it's a drama, it's a piece that focuses on a question. How can we believe in a world that is characterized by so much pain, so much injustice? So that's actually questioning the evil. This was what I wanted to investigate. You probably know that in philosophy, you have the TODC, that is the God's process. And so Freud kind of puts God on trial. And God replicates. So I said to myself that every man could recognize him or herself in both, be they believers or non-believers. At the same time, was forced to listen to the other person's word. So the atheist would have listened to the word of believers and the other way around. And that's important. It's important always to be united. It's important, we as human beings, to be united and to focus on the big questions. What we have in common are questions. We are all overwhelmed by the biggest questions. Why do we live? Why do we die? Do we have to love? Do we love well? Do we love badly? Are we right or are we wrong? We all have the same questions. We all pose ourselves the same questions, but we all give different answers to these questions. And these questions make us unique. And sometimes they even create contradictions within us. Sometimes these differences even lead to wars, to conflicts. So I believe that the solution here always lies in trying to go back to the question. That's what I intend for human brotherhood, being brothers united by these questions. Humanism is precisely this for me. It means sharing the same questions. And we are all united by our questions. And then we get separated by the answers, but the questions unite us. To me, it's important to distinguish between knowing and believing. And this is precisely what you have heard, you have listened to at the end of the excerpt. Going away, the visitor tells the other, you won't have any certainties. You are free. It's you who are free to believe whether you're free to decide whether you want to believe or not. This is very important for me. I believe in God, but I do not make any confusion between believing and knowing. If I were asked whether God exists, I would answer, I do not know, but I believe he exists. If you pose the same question to an atheist, the atheist would reply, I do not know, but I believe he does not exist. And if you asked the same question to my mother, she would reply, I don't know and I don't care. This means that we are all agnostics. This comes from Greek, and the term means I do not know. So there are agnostics who are believers, like myself, atheist agnostics, and indifferent agnostics. But we are all brothers, and we are all characterized by this condition of being agnostics. God is not a subject of knowledge. God cannot be discovered at the end of a philosophical or mathematical reasoning. God cannot be found with a telescope or a microscope. God cannot be demonstrated. You can only feel God. You can only experience God. That is why it is very important for me to say, I do not know, but I believe that. To me, faith is also a way to live our own ignorance. When I did not believe in God, I was living in ignorance, but with a deep anguish. Now that I believe in God, I live in ignorance. I still believe in ignorance, but I have confidence. I have a deep and intense faith and confidence. My faith is devoid of doubts. It is immense. It is powerful. But it is not knowledge. I cannot communicate this. I would love to be contagious in this. I would like to be infective, but this is impossible. The visitor concerns precisely this issue. We are free to believe or not to believe, but there is no decisive argument in favor or against God. There is also an aspect in the visitor which is a way to tell this love for the personification in a way. So the same visitor visits us, but still leaves us in our freedom because he loves us. This is a constant and recurring topic in your works. The very same Freud was loved by God. So when you watch that theater piece, you think of this. So when you say a God that manifests himself as God would not be God, he would be the king of the world. But I came to you for your freedom because I love your freedom. So that's an announcement. So this theater piece is kind of an announcement. I think that God has created human beings and the world for an absurd reason. that makes everything revolve and go around. This is to say for love. It's because of that. It is this love that gives us this freedom. God has not created some cyborgs. We are not cyborgs. We live in ignorance and in freedom. And so respect for God and for his creatures lies in the fact that he gave us ignorance and freedom. Thank you.
Non c'è tema che non ci...
Well, you know, this is a topic that we're very passionate about. This is the ultimate topic, that is to say, the questions coming from the heart of the person. So now I'm going back to Mencarelli. And, well, you ask yourself the same question, although in a different way. And let's read Da sempre tornare by Daniele Mencarelli from his last book. I wish I had the courage to confess Anna Maria what God is in my life. Not him exactly, but the desire for him. I would like to make her feel what I have inside. Take her hand from the steering wheel and place it in the center of my chest. Tell her without any shame, I have it in me like a dog that has lost its master, with that nostalgia as if it had lived with him, and it looks for him everywhere. At certain moments, the scent of the master becomes more intense, then everything becomes a loving presence, but they are flashes, burns of light. In those moments, I see the hand that planted the trees. I wouldn't say anything to Anna Maria. It is something else now that crushes my breath. If I find myself praying now, if I look at the roof of my car, repeating words in my mind, it is not for her, but due to the terror that those instants are nothing but an illusion. God, please, don't do me the wrong of not existing.
Allora, Daniele
Mencarelli, here you recount in your novel about your return home when you were 18 years old, and Anna Maria is one of the people you met. She's not a believer, yet she feels an irreducible need for the infinite. So, as if sometimes she came back to you during your life. Well, yes, you know, this is a bit of a provocation, but actually I think the real question we should ask ourselves is, how do we love? By that I mean that in my life, the natural border between love and not love is, well, what is the meaning of love? I love something that is going to die, but my love instinctively is something bigger. So the size of my love is not related to death. And therefore, the question that we should ask ourselves is, how much and how do we love? Because I think that faith is proportional to love. Differently from Eric, maybe, I am not able to live and accept that form of ignorance that allows me to believe without knowing. And, well, you know, there's something else that is very important nowadays and is very important, very relevant for those who try and tell about the world. In this text that was written, the boy almost prays. when looking at the roof of the Fiat 126 car, and well, he sees the hand that planted the trees. Sort of praying. But I think that nowadays, in order to understand human beings in their agnostic nature, I think it's much better to, well, you know, to talk, to meet. I went to many schools. And, well, I have many meetings with the students, also their parents, also in the evening. And I love to, well, you know, to talk about the nothing, that meaningless vertical that is called nothing, the void, the nothing. Like a ball that turns around with many other balls, and you know, this one cell being that from a primary liquid starts to grow, and then all of a sudden becomes aware of itself, and in a very microscopic time compared to the infinite, it finds itself inside a room with thousands of people talking about everything and nothing. Well, this is the origin, but then the destiny is the same. So all the things you created, your children, Eric's books, my books, music, well, it happens to me with music. All the music that human beings have created. Well, you know, this makes us aware of something that has absolutely no meaning. It had no meaning before, and it will have no meaning in the future. So playing about the nothing, showing the nothing, in my opinion, this is a way in order to trigger that rebellion that starts from being agnostic and which takes us towards search for God. I think that we need to tell about the nothing nowadays, because well, I think this is the story of thousands of different ideas and cults that actually fill our life. They create distractions, but, well, they are nothing. Well, nothing is like an abyss which you need to see and touch with your hands. As I said, my main enemy is myself. I am the main enemy of myself, but I was never able not to listen to that evil voice that falls from the top or maybe comes from the bottom, I don't know. And, well, in front of my eyes, that evil voice show me the existence that is based on nothing and created by the nothing. So this is why I always looked for exactly the opposite. So when you talked about the search for nothing, and then we will move to another story, but you were talking about the search for nothing, and you reminded me of what Schmitt said about death. It's like a comparison. Well, it's like something human beings are trying to deny, or they're trying to run away from it. And then, you know, there's another comment by Emanuele Severino, the great philosopher, who used to say that for him, Leopardi tells about the solid nothing of life. Well, yes, I agree. Leopardi represents that sensitivity. He is the man of the infinite, so the man that feels the wind arriving, and therefore he feels the presence of God. And, well, you know, that presence, coexistence of everything and nothing. Well, and now let's move to another reading. I'd like to invite the actor that will read this text taken from Éric Schmitt's Messier, Ibrahim, and the Flowers of the Quran.
Polizia.
Police, open up. Okay, it's over, I said to myself. I have told too many lies, now they will arrest me. I put on my dressing gown. I removed all the bolts. In person, they looked much less bad than I had believed. They even asked me politely if they could come in. I, too, after all, preferred to dress before going to prison. In the living room, the inspector took my hand and said tactfully, "My boy, we have bad news for you. Your father is dead." In that moment, I do not know what struck me more, whether the death of my father or the fact that the policeman called me by my first name. The fact is that I slumped down in my chair. He threw himself under a train near Marseille. This was also strange. What was the need to go all the way to Marseille? Trains are everywhere. There are just as many in Paris, maybe more. Definitely, I would never have been able to understand my father. Everything suggests that your father was desperate and that he voluntarily decided to put an end to his days. A father committing suicide. That certainly didn't make me feel any better. At this point, I preferred to have a father abandoning me. At least I could have imagined him devoured by remorse. The cops looked as if they understood my silence. They looked at the empty library, the flat around them, telling themselves that they would be leaving soon. Who needs warning, my boy? Here at last, I had an appropriate reaction. I got up and I went to get the list of the 4 names that my father had left before he left. The inspector put it in his pocket. We will pass everything on to social welfare. And then he approached me with a hangdog expression, and I realized that he was about to get a big one. I have a delicate request to make of you now. You should come and identify the body. And that's when the alarm went off. I screamed as if someone had pushed the button. The policemen were flailing around me, looking for the switch, but there was nothing they could do. The switch was me, and I could no longer stop. Monsieur Ibrahim was perfect. Hearing my screams, he came up, understood the situation at once, and said he would go to Marseille to recognize the corpse. This is a very tragic, dramatic moment of the story. Mose, the young protagonist of the story, has established a friendship relation with Monsieur Ibrahim, and this when he learns that his father committed suicide. So once again, the focus is on death and human frailty. But still, in this wonderful work of art by Éric-Emmanuel Schmitt, there's something new that flourishes, that blooms, which is friendship and the relationship with the other. Yes, that's true. Mose has a father who was not the adequate person, the right person to be a father. And Monsieur Ibrahim did not have any children. But in fact, he was born to be a father. And Monsieur Ibrahim becomes the elected father for Moses. Oftentimes in life, this is precisely what happens. We can become the fathers, the stepfathers for others who are not biologically our children, or we become the children or the brothers when we do not have kinship relationship with someone, it's very important for me to show that love moves around. It goes beyond kinship relationships. Sometimes these relationships may imply only tiresome relationships and customary ones. Some days ago told me that actually he had been married with his wife for 30 years. So I wondered, is this love, or are you just being tired? Are you just being lazy? Relationships must be living and strong. And this is actually what I like to tell in my books. At the core of my books, there are always liberating relationships. And this is also what was about in Daniele's books. Life is made of an encounter. An encounter is something that marks a before and an after. We've all had encounters in our lives that marked a before and an after, and I always try to tell these encounters in my books. You never have heroes meeting in my books, but rather always weak beings who find themselves in difficult situations. And it is the encounter that makes them stronger. So we are weak alone, but if there's a pair, if there's two of them, you become strong.
Visto che è l'ultima domanda che le faccio, contasse questo.
I have one last question for you. I would like to comment on this episode. Éric-Emmanuel Schmitt actually wrote a major book, The Gospel According to Pilato. And actually the journalist of Le Monde, suggested that you did not tell that you were a Christian. Would you like to tell this episode? Yes, of course. All French intellectuals have historically positioned themselves distant from the church. And this has been something particular both for intellectuals and for the church. But now we live in a different time and in a different world. So keeping distance with the church is no longer necessary. But still, French intellectuals have a bias. They're biased, as if an artist or an intellectual should never talk about God or faith, especially if they are believers. And I think this is a really widespread and shared bias. I am a philosopher by training, and I adore destroying shared biases. So actually, I had written this Gospel According to Pilatus, which basically talks about how one can interiorize the gospel and the Passion of Christ. So the idea is that of Pilatus, a pragmatic Roman that has nothing mystical in himself, and this man believes that he's dealing with an enigma because he's dealing with a corpse that has disappeared from his coffin. This is actually Christianity. That's the story of a corpse that has disappeared. And so Pilatus thinks that he has to deal with an enigma, but in fact he realizes that he's dealing with a mystery. An enigma is something that has a solution. A mystery is a problem that has no solution. But it is rather something that induces you to think, that generates emotions and is dynamic for the life of your soul. Of course, I love mysteries. I love only mysteries. I am not interested in enigmas. When I read a crimi, for example, I'm always a detective story. I'm always depressed because actually the solution is there. What I like is not having any solution. So it is mystery that I like very much, because that makes me think, that makes me reflect and feel emotions, that makes me alive and awakens me. So this journalist, this Le Monde journalist, asked me, well, you are an excellent writer. It would be better that you would not declare that you are a Christian. And then she told me, well, otherwise, you are going to be kind of labeled as a Christian writer. And so I replied, well, then I would be in a very good company in this category.
L'ultimo passaggio lo dedichiamo a...
All right. And now the last reading by our actors. We will have both of them for this last reading, Giampiero Bartolini and Matteo Bonanni. Thank you again. It's from the novel Tutto chiede salvezza by Daniele Mencarelli. And well, let's inform the audience of the meeting. Netflix, starting from October, will dedicate a TV series on this book, Tutto chiede salvezza.
Je me permets,
well,
puisque j'ai lu...
I would like just to say something. I read this book by Daniele Mencarelli. It's fantastic. It's a great book. And the book is always better. The film will be wonderful, but the book is always better.
Allora, voi la parola.
All right, so the floor to Bartolini and Bonanni. Let me show you. He searches again for something in his worn wallet, finally finding it, a photograph, black and white. He places it before my eyes, a woman in her 40s, her beautiful face discolored by time. This is my mother. He says it with a boyish, proud pride. Then something from inside starts to hurt. One morning, he says to me, Giorgio, Mother is going to the market. I was with grandfather. I wasn't even 10 years old. An hour goes by, 2 hours. Mother doesn't come back. In the evening, the hospital in Genzano calls us. Giorgio starts to pull up with his nose. His hand is still resting on my thigh, starts to jerk slightly. Me and grandfather got into the hospital. They take him to one side. He starts screaming like a madman. They take him away. I stay with a nurse who asks me by name, my name, what team I'm from, which team I support. I want to go with grandfather, so I run away and chase him. From afar, I can still hear him shouting. I go near him. He looks inside the room that enters. Giorgio seems unable to handle the memory. More than anything else, for him, what he is recounting is not a fact that belongs to memory. It is here, now. It is happening inside him. Then I also want to go in, but the nurse blocks me. Then another one comes in. From inside, I hear grandfather who can't stop crying. I'm almost 10 years old. I'm not a kid. I start shouting to get in. Please, I have to see her. And instead, I never saw her again. Giorgio has in his eyes the mother they denied him. I can see her in tears. You don't die like this, without warning anyone, without even saying goodbye.
Alla fine...
Well, you know, we are all in love with Giorgio. He is one of the characters of the book that we really fall in love with, because this is what you communicate. Well, Eric, earlier talked about brotherhood, fraternity, the beauty of having some friendships that become even better than, having brothers or sisters. So a brother that you meet on the street is even better than your real blood brother. Humanity consists of billions of people, and we can see each other in two ways. Either the others are in good or bad, especially bad. They are the destiny that we manage to run away from. So Giorgio is that boy that has to face the nightmare of all the children in the world, losing his mother, that goes out and never sees her again. Or otherwise, I can just see that the destiny of Giorgio is a part of my identical matter, of my life too. This is what Giorgio is for me. He went through what I didn't have to face, but it was a bit like having to face it too. So this is what happens to the others. Is it what we don't have to face, or otherwise maybe it is something we don't have to encounter, but it is also attached to our life? Thank you. Well, a passion for the person. This is the title of this edition, and we have seen two writers who have a passion for humanity, with this deep passion for humanity. And this is something that characterizes literature, even if officially, our society, our culture, our predominant thoughts and ideas deny this passion. And this was clearly shown to us this evening, this passion for the person. At the end of this event, I'd like to remind you that you can contribute to the existence of the meeting. This is a unique event. It's always new, just like this evening meeting demonstrated to us. The meeting has always been a place for culture, and you can donate now. At the Ithaca bookstore, you can buy the books from our authors and by our authors. I'd like to thank Sandra, also the Italian publisher, Sandro Ferri, so the Italian publisher of Éric-Emmanuel Schmitt, and he's also a dear friend of Daniele Mencarelli. Thank you, Sandro. Thank you all. Thank you.
Civiltà dell'amore, fratelli e sorelle, costruite senza stancarvi mai questa civiltà. Lavorate per questo, pregate per questo, soffrite per questo.
Daniele, facciamo una
Tutti abbiamo bisogno di qualcuno che ci abbracci.
È la persona la cosa più importante.
Accade che a un certo punto ti senti a casa, un luogo dove si possa vivere.
Noi siamo una famiglia.
Loro ci sono per noi.
Perché l'aspettavano così?
Perché credo in quello che dico.
Questo e basta?
Sì.
Don Giussani ha generato un popolo e io faccio parte di questo popolo.
L'avvenimento in cui Dio entra nella nostra esistenza e tutti, colpiti da una curiosità, sospendono per un istante l'ora e guardano dalla parte da cui viene il grido.